hello again, it's Matt. I am extremely excited to introduce you to my next guest, a man that I've seen interviewed multiple times. I've seen him on television, and I'm just so honored that he took time out of his busy schedule to spend time interviewing with me. Now, at Pro Athlete Advantage, you know that I take a very holistic approach to developing ourselves, and this understanding that everything is linked, and what you feed your mind feeds your body, and what you feed your body feeds your mind. So we have to look beyond just training our mental muscle and look how we're taking care of our body through nutrition, through recovery. And that's why I'm so excited about this interview, because it's all about recovery. Specifically, what rest you're getting at night, your sleep. Let me introduce you to Dr. Michael Breus. Dr. Breus is also known as Dr. Oz's personal sleep coach. I mean, what a cool kind of title to have, right? Maybe that should be on my wish list, to be Dr. Oz's high performance coach, his mental toughness coach one day. But what a cool title. Now, let me give you some more about Dr. Breus. He is a clinical psychologist. He was a diplomat of the American Board of Sleep Medicine and fellow at the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. I don't know if I'm saying diplomat right. He was one of the youngest people to pass the board at age 31 with a specialty in sleep disorders, and is one of only 163 psychologists in the world with his credentials and distinction. Dr. Breus is on the clinical advisory board of the Dr. Oz Show and appears regularly on the show. He has been on CNN, Oprah, The View, Anderson Cooper, Rachel Ray, Kelly and Michael, The Today Show. I could go on. And he's been in private practice for 16 years, based out of Los Angeles, California. This was an extremely interesting discussion for me. We talk about everything from how much sleep you should get at night to how to prepare if you're a business person for that big trip coming up. We kind of ran the gamut in the time we had together, and I know you are going to get a ton out of this. I was scribbling notes furiously. You're going to see me on this. This was a Skype interview, a little different than what you've seen before from me in these interview series. So you'll see a little split screen with both of us, and my head's down most of the time, scribbling notes. Enjoy this interview with Dr. Breus. Get a ton out of it. Get your pen and paper ready, because there's a little challenge that he throws down that I throw down at you during this interview. Have a fabulous rest of your day, and as always, don't hold back. Enjoy the interview. All right, Dr. Breus, thanks so much for taking time with me today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, absolute pleasure to be with you and to learn from you. And obviously, I have seen you on the Dr. Oz Show and a variety of other places, from CNN to Oprah to, my gosh, there's too many to mention. I'd use our whole time just talking about what TV shows you've been on and how you've contributed to a variety of different publications as well. So this is pretty fun for me. What I talk about, as you know, is mental toughness, right? And it's about building confidence and focus and emotional control and helping athletes and business leaders to persevere through whatever comes their way, right? Pushing through adversity. How do we get out of our own way, build that mental muscle? And one of the components I spend a lot of time on is kind of that recovery side of things and nutrition. And you have to be well-rounded, and you've got to be taking care of your body and your mind. And why I'm so excited to talk to you is to talk about the sleep. You're the sleep doctor. I mean, everyone who's watching, you can go to thesleepdoctor.com and you will see Dr. Breus there. And it's a huge component. I know that I am impacted when I don't sleep enough.
Sure.
I know sometimes when I sleep too much, I'm also impacted. So
Absolutely.
I've got a lot of questions I want to ask you around sleep in particular. But where I wanted to start is just, how did you get into becoming the sleep doctor?
So people always ask this. So you'll find this particularly interesting with your sports background. So I did my undergraduate work at a small school in upstate New York, and I was doing getting my PhD in clinical psychology at the University of Georgia. So I am a Bulldog. Go Dogs. And it was interesting because they had a really interesting sports psychology program there. And I was in the clinical psychology, not in the sports psychology. And I ended up doing kind of a double major, if you will, and started to learn a lot more about exercise physiology, sports psychology. And I really said to myself, and this is going back 17 years now, holy cow, going back saying, this is a group of people that I really want to work with. And so I had done my master's and then was working on my dissertation and was applying for residency programs. And one of the best sports psychology residency programs for what I was interested in, which was also eating disorders, so kind of combining eating disorders with sports psychology and how do those two kind of intermingle, was, believe it or not, at the University of Mississippi Medical Center in Jackson, Mississippi. Now, being from Georgia, this didn't bother me at all. I love the South and, kind of adapt well to it. But here was the catch is this residency program, it was the top of the top. Like it only accepted the Harvards and the Yales and the Princetons and that kind of stuff. And, I'm a Georgia boy.
Yes.
And so I said, well, I can't get into that part of the program, but they did have a regular clinical psychology part of the program. And there was a sleep track in there. And I had worked my way through graduate school running all of the machines that you use to monitor somebody's sleep. So I'm kind of a geek. I like to take machines apart and put them back together and that kind of stuff. And I said, look, I could be a great addition to your sleep team. And they said, well, we're actually looking for somebody to do that. That'd be perfect. And so I went in, and here was my idea, was I was going to get accepted, and then I was going to transfer like 2 weeks after I got there and get into the sports psychology program, right? I thought I was being really sneaky, really smart. I was going to work the system, the whole thing.
Right.
And by the third day, I absolutely fell in love with clinical sleep medicine. I knew it was exactly where I needed to be. I mean, dude, I changed people's lives like this. Like, it's amazing. I mean, literally, I can change people's lives in 24 hours sometimes. And, to have that kind of a gift and that kind of opportunity is so rare in life. As a clinical psychologist, sometimes it could take weeks, months, even years to see treatment gains. Like things with depression or anxiety or things like that. Whereas with sleep, I can zoom right in. I can see exactly what the problem is. A lot of times there's something that's a fairly quick fix. Sometimes it's a little bit longer. Don't get me wrong. I don't have a magic wand. I wish I did. But I've really, really enjoyed the opportunity to work with people. I mean, my specialty is insomnia, and night before the big event type of stuff. Which actually falls well within your purview and the mental toughness aspect for business and for athletes and things like that. So I think we're a good match in terms of our material that we want to get out to your audience. It just really turned out to be a great thing for me. I've been practicing now for 17 years. And as you said, I've been very, very fortunate. I do a lot of television stuff and I do magazines and all that kind of fun stuff just to kind of get the word out. But my goal is really to educate as many people as I can about the importance of sleep. And by the way, I'm not the guy that's going to turn to everybody and say, oh, by the way, you have to get 8 hours. You can't drink any alcohol. You can't have any caffeine. Because quite frankly, it doesn't work. And most people don't follow that advice. So I'm a realistic sleep specialist, right? And so I'll tell you what happens in my home is I don't ever go to bed before midnight. And I'm up between 6:30 and 7. So I'm a 6.5 hour sleeper. I have been almost my entire life. And I can teach people how to determine if they are and if they're not, how to work through that. We have 3 animals in our house. I have a French bulldog, a Chihuahua, and a cat. They are all in the bed with my wife and I every single night. The television is on and we fall asleep with the TV on. Okay. And so I break all of the rules.
I was gonna say, well, you're messing with me here. I'm thinking no drinks, no caffeine, no TV, no screens. All right. So keep going. Sorry.
So here's what I discovered very early in my career is if I was the guy that said everybody goes to bed at 9 o'clock in a pitch dark room, silent, freezing cold, with no distractions. Number one, nobody's going to do it. And number two, everybody's going to stop listening because that's not reality. That's not life. Right. And so if you're an athlete or you're a CEO executive or whoever you are, and you've got a lot of big stuff going on, you may not get 8 hours of sleep. You may have to go out for a dinner and drink with your client. You may be stressed out. You may not be able to exercise. Maybe one of the most relaxing things for you to do is to watch ESPN as you're falling asleep. I'm good with all of that because I'll teach everybody exactly how to do that and still get a good night's sleep.
Interesting. We're all trained.
I'm blowing your mind, aren't I?
Yeah, no, I love it because we're all trained that I need 8 hours of sleep, right? That's the standard, at least I've heard over and over again. That's what I need.
So I'm gonna prove to you right now that that's a myth, and I'll tell you how we're going to do that. So first of all, the average sleep cycle in terms of the length of that sleep cycle is approximately 90 minutes long. Okay, and it's very interesting because we go through a very particular dance moves, if you will. So we go from wake to stage 1, into stage 2, then down into stages 3 and 4, back to stage 2, and on into REM sleep. All right. That cycle takes approximately 90 minutes, and the average individual has 5 of those cycles.
Okay.
So 5 times 90 is 450 minutes. If we divide that by 60 to see how many hours of sleep, it's only 7.5 hours. So right there, the myth is blown. Okay. Very few people actually need 8 hours of sleep. Okay, Michael, you're telling me I don't need 8.5 hours sleep. Well, how much sleep could I possibly need?
Yes.
All right, so a couple of things to think about here. Number one is most people have what we call a socially determined wake-up time, right? And so in my world, it's 6:30 because I got to get my kids up. That's when my kids have to get up because they got to be on the bus by like 7:10. And so I go in, I get them going, I make their breakfast, I make sure they're dressed, I get them to eat, and I get them to the bus by like 7 o'clock, 7:05 in order to do that. So I have no choice. I have to wake up at 6:30. So then what I have most of my patients do is count backwards from their socially determined wake-up time. That's 7.5 hours, and that's their new bedtime. You know, most people don't think about it. Like everybody's wake-up time is kind of determined, but your bedtime has got a lot of flex to it, right?
Yes.
And so what ends up happening is somebody turns to me and says, well, you know what, Dr. Breus, I was really going to go to sleep at that time, but I started doing something on the computer, and I looked up, and it was 1 o'clock in the morning, right? So what I have my patients do is I have them set a watch either on their alarm or on their phone for when to go to bed, not when to wake up. Okay? Because the more consistently you go to bed and wake up at the same time, even on the weekend, everybody, I know that sucks, by the way, okay? I'm just here to tell you, I get that. It's not a lot of fun waking up at 6:30 on Saturday morning. However, your body craves consistency, okay? And so sleep is a lot like a baseball game, right? And so if the baseball game starts at 8 and you show up at 9:30, they don't start the game over, right?
Yes.
You show up and you're in the 3rd inning. Or if you show up at 6:30, all you're going to see is batting practice, right? You're not going to actually see the game. The same holds true with sleep. Your body has inside it something called a circadian rhythm, right? And that's your internal biological clock. That's one aspect of sleep. The second aspect is something called your sleep drive. This is actually due to a buildup of in your brain something called adenosine. And so when a cell eats a piece of glucose, what comes out the back end, one of the things that comes out there is adenosine. So again, interesting. If you look at the molecular structure of adenosine and you look at the molecular structure of caffeine, they're off by 1 molecule.
Really?
Which is kind of fascinating. So the caffeine fits into that adenosine receptor site in the brain perfectly and blocks that adenosine. That's why caffeine makes you not sleepy. But when your brain burns through the caffeine, all this adenosine comes flying through the door, and that's where the caffeine crash comes in. Okay? Now, don't worry, I'm getting back to this 7.5 hours, 6.5 hours of sleep. So we know there are these two systems. There's the drive, which is the adenosine, and there's the circadian rhythm. The more consistent we are with our circadian rhythm, the faster our brain goes to sleep and, most importantly, gets into deep sleep. Okay? Have you ever had this experience where you get in bed and you're physically exhausted and you can't fall asleep?
Yes.
Yeah. That's called being wired and tired. That's where you have a ton of sleep drive, but your circadian rhythm is off. 90% of the time, that's because you went to bed too early. Now, that's a radically different concept, okay? Because most people are like, wait a second, Michael, you're telling me to go to bed later? Yes, I am, and I'll tell you why. Because I want people to use their internal natural sleep drive so that it's right at that right moment. It's at 8 o'clock for the baseball game to then help them knock off and go to sleep very, very easily. And so when we're talking to executives and we're talking to people out there, and we're talking about this idea of 8 hours, okay? 8 hours is BS, all right? Now, could some people need 8 hours? You bet they could. But I'm going to teach everybody an experiment right now to figure out exactly how much sleep they need.
Okay.
You take your socially determined wake-up time, which is, let's say in our example, 6:30. You count back 7.5 hours, which is 11 o'clock. So you get in bed at 11. If you wake up within 5 minutes of that alarm going off in the morning, you just found your bedtime, which would be 11 o'clock. Now, I did this experiment, and it failed miserably. Okay? And let me tell you what happened. I was going to bed at 11, and I was waking up at 5:30. Going to bed at 11, waking up at 5:30. No matter what I did, I was waking up at 5:30. I was trying magnesium. I was trying melatonin. I was trying all the stuff you hear about.
Right.
So then I said, hey, genius, why don't you just go to bed an hour later? Maybe your body doesn't need 7.5 hours of sleep. Maybe your sleep cycles aren't 90 minutes long. Maybe they're 80 minutes long or 75 minutes long. And so I said, okay, let me give this a shot. So I started to go to bed at midnight. Guess what? I started waking up at 6:30 on the dot.
Really?
My body will tell me exactly how much sleep I need just by running this experiment. So for all of your listeners, all the people out there who are going to hear this, run the experiment. It takes 5 to 10 days of kind of, figuring it out, but you will discover fairly quickly what I call sleep zone is.
Okay.
And then you know how much sleep need you have. My sleep need is between 6.5 and 7 hours. My wife's is 8.5 hours. Okay, so she goes to bed an hour and a half earlier than me most nights.
Yes.
We might wake up at the same time to help work with the kids together, but she needs more sleep than me. That's what her body is telling her that she needs. So I say, go get it. My body doesn't tell me that. And by the way, I don't drink a whole lot of caffeine. So this is all like live sleep-related energy that you're hearing right now. Like I don't have a whole lot of coffee in my world. You can only imagine what it would be like if I did.
That's right. That's right.
Right. So just with a little bit of knowledge today, we now understand there are two systems for sleep. There's the drive and there's the rhythm.
Yes.
Right. And we know that the consistency of the rhythm is going to be the big fix. And so don't worry about quantity. Worry about quality of sleep. And this is a simple way to do it.
That's really helpful. That's something I'm going to start doing tonight, actually. And I'm going to lay down this challenge for everybody watching this today or listening to it live. Commit to the next 10 days of doing this.
There you go.
Figuring out when you need to wake up in the morning, that socially driven wake up time.
That's right.
Count back 7.5 hours.
Exactly.
Start going to bed. If you wake up within 5 minutes of your alarm of that predetermined social time, you're bang on. If not, start making some adjustments. A little earlier, a little later, but play with it and see what your sleep cycle is going to be, what your sleep zone is. Excuse me, to use your sleep zone.
Exactly. So that's a super practical piece of information that all of you out there can figure out to understand. And remember, you got to do it on the weekends too. There's no sleeping in on the weekends. Now, if you happen to sleep in maybe 15 to 30 minutes, that's okay, but you can't go past 30 minutes, and here's why. Your rhythm will shift. So you ever have that experience where you stay up late on Friday, sleep in on Saturday, stay up late on Saturday, sleep in on Sunday? What does your body want to do Sunday night? It doesn't want to go to bed on time. It wants to stay up late, and Monday morning sucks, right?
Yes.
Because your brain it's moved. You're in a different time zone.
Yes.
You've literally shifted yourself into a different time zone in your brain. So that consistency turns out to be super duper important. So the caveat for everyone is make sure that you get up within 30 minutes of your wake up time. And by the way, don't nap on the weekends if you can absolutely help it, because again, that will throw off that drive or that rhythm.
Yes. But if we're keeping consistent and we're in our sleep zone, then we shouldn't have to nap anyway.
You won't need to nap, I guarantee it.
Yes.
That is correct.
Okay. Let me ask you this. I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. This is selfish, personal for me.
It's okay.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I typically get up about 4:45 because I go work out at 5:15, right?
Okay.
So I'm at the gym by 5:15.
Mm-hmm.
On the other days, what I typically do is I'll get up around 4 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
It's my quiet time. It's part of my morning routine, right? So I go through our 3 children are asleep, my wife's asleep. It's kind of Matt's time.
Exactly.
Which is weird that it's in the morning.
It's so rare to find any, so it's good that you found
it. Carving it out at all hours of the night. So in that circumstance, would I be better served to make it consistent like 4:15 and do that from here on out instead of like up, down, up, down, up, down?
You would be, because again, you're not giving your body the consistency that it's looking for. So my recommendation there would be see if you can find the time that's as close to that you could use every single day.
Okay.
Right? See if you can keep it consistent and play around with it. And different people's bodies can do different things, but generally speaking, it's all predicated on the wake up time, by the way. So like as an example, my birthday was this past weekend and my kids wanted to go to a double feature. So we went to Lego Batman and we went to something else. And that was the birthday present they gave to me.
Yes.
And we were out a little bit later than normal. Now they weren't out that late, but I didn't end up getting into bed until almost 1 o'clock in the morning. Now, the question becomes, well, okay, Michael, how is that going to mess you up? It's not going to mess me up that bad, but the wake up time had to be consistent. So come Sunday morning, I'll be honest with you, that was not a lot of fun because I went to bed about a half an hour, 45 minutes later than I normally did. But as long as I didn't nap in between, I was in great shape.
Interesting. It almost reminds me of like traveling internationally when you get jet lagged. We used to travel to Switzerland when we lived there, and the worst thing that we could do was when we arrived, because we'd land at 9 in the morning, the worst thing we could do is go to sleep. If we could force ourselves to stay up and then go to bed, typically, in most cases, we were pretty close to on schedule.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Okay. So that's good, though, that consistency. That's what we're about. That's why I love talking to you, because like what I talked all the time about the athletes and business people is consistency, right? And when in training that mental toughness, that mental muscle, it's consistent, day in, day out.
And that's what's really hard for the group of people that are listening today, right? Is because there's always travel, right? If you're an athlete, you're traveling to a match, a tournament, a game, what have you. If you're a business executive, you're going somewhere for business, or you're having to wake up because your client is in another country or another city or something like that. And so it's really about understanding your own level of consistency and bringing that consistency with you wherever you go, right? So like, as an example, one of the things that I talk about with a lot of my athletes and my CEO executives and things like that is, how do you get to sleep wherever you end up? Like, as an example, can you sleep on an airplane? I teach people how to sleep on airplanes. I mean, believe it or not, this is a great one. You'll love this one. So one of my favorite traveler websites, you may have already heard of this. It's called seatguru.com. Have you ever heard of it?
I've never heard of it.
So it's seatguru.com. If you type in your airline and your flight, it will bring up the plane schematics, and it will show you the best seats on the airplane for sleep.
Seriously?
I swear to you, it's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and I bring a little sleep kit with me on the airplane. So I'll have my eye shades, I may have like earplugs, or I might have earbuds because I'm going to listen to like some sort of relaxation, meditation, something that kind of brings me down. Here's another interesting fact that a lot of, I think this audience in particular will find fascinating, is in order for your brain to enter into a state of unconsciousness, your heart rate must be at around 60 or below. Okay? Now think about that for a second. That is not necessarily an easy task. So you need to be recumbent, and you need to do something that brings that heart down. Now, that could be some form of meditation. Yes. It could be some form of deep breathing exercises. There's a lot of different things, and I know you've probably talked with this group before about some of those techniques as well in order to bring you down. Because the thing to remember here, everybody, is sleep is not an on-off switch. It's more like slowly pulling your foot off the gas and slowly putting your foot on the brake, right? There's a process that has to occur. And all that process is really doing is getting your heart rate down to about 60 in order to enter into that state of unconsciousness. And so if you're consistent with your timing and you can get that heart rate down, you'll start to find that you'll fall asleep very, very quickly, even in unfamiliar surroundings, right? And that's kind of the key here for a lot of those folks that are out there listening is you're in a hotel room, you're someplace that you're not really normally there. And so what can you do to calm yourself down, make that stress level go down, and get you to where you need to go, which is sleep? And so, like I was saying, on the airplane, I'll have eye shades, I'll have meditation, I'll have earplugs. Be careful especially on long flights, with alcohol. So I have a lot of patients who are like, oh, free drinks, I'm in, right? No. You want to have a glass of wine with your meal? Go for it. I don't care. Sure. But what you really want to be careful of is really one drink in the air is worth about 2 on the ground. Okay? And there's reasoning behind that. Number one is you're rebreathing a tremendous amount of carbon dioxide up there. Don't get me wrong, the ventilation systems are fine, but generally speaking, you are rebreathing a good bit of air. Also, the air pressure does a little bit to your oxygen diffusion into your lungs, and so you, again, want to be careful. So if you're going to have a glass of wine or even two, you really want to stop it there and never, ever, ever mix a sleeping pill with alcohol on an airplane, okay? So I've had a patient who did that, and it was a mess. So he was doing an international flight, and he popped an Ambien, and before they took off, they said, hey, you want a free glass of champagne? Oh, sure. So, and they never stop pouring, so you never really know what's going on. So he's drinking his champagne, he takes his Ambien, and then there's engine trouble. And they can't use that airplane. And so they have to disembark the airplane. Oh. And he was so out of it, they had to stick him in a wheelchair to get him off the airplane.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
So lesson to be learned here. Number one, don't mix alcohol and sleeping pills. Number two, at least wait till takeoff before you take a sleeping pill. Otherwise, you're going to be in for quite an interesting scenario. But you actually hit the nail on the head when you talk about Switzerland, because when you get in, great thing to do, stay awake, go outside. Yes. It turns out sunlight will actually turn off the melatonin faucet in your brain. So one of the things that I like to talk about with people is, melatonin is that key that starts the engine for sleep. And so using light to our advantage is very, very important. So you mentioned earlier about the screens, right? Your iPhone or your iPad, your computer. That is a special kind of light called blue light. It's on the blue spectrum. 460 nanometers is about the spectrum that you're looking for there.
Yes.
That, when it hits your eyeballs, there's a special cell in your eyes called melanopsin cells, and that will turn off that melatonin switch. So when you arrive, walk outside. And even if you have a meeting within an hour, even if you have to walk around outside at the airport while you're waiting for your Uber or your driver or your cab or whatever, get sunlight. I'm not saying look into the sun, but take off your sunglasses and make sure that you're getting a good 15 minutes of direct sunlight. And the next morning, make sure that you get direct sunlight, because that rejiggers that circadian clock, right? Because what you did was you took your brain, which was in one time zone, and then you put your body into another time zone. And you can't just kind of turn your brain and make it work, but you can if you use light. And so one of my big secrets for a lot of my corporate execs is a strategic use of light. It can be very, very helpful, especially during international travel.
Interesting. Well, that's fascinating, because I even think about, like coming to see you, if I hop on a plane, come out to Los Angeles from Denver, we're only an hour difference, right?
Right.
So it's not a huge, drastic change.
No.
But when I get there, even to just that mindset of how do I stay consistent when I get out there? And yes, the theory is that maybe I wake up a little earlier or later or whatever, but depending where I'm at. But
right, so there's a couple things you can do. So as an example, you're only talking about one time zone. So here's the good news, is the human body adjusts one time zone per day, okay? So within a day, you're good to go. But let's say you came out to visit me from New York, okay? That's a little bit different story. We're talking about a 3-hour difference. Yes. So one of the things I have a lot of my corporate executives do is I have them begin to move their eating schedule to the time of their destination. Because there's a second, it's fascinating. There's a second circadian clock in your gut, right? Your gut is what we call your second brain, right? And you know this from all the nutrition stuff that you talk about, right?
Yes.
Is once you stick that food in you, there's a lot of stuff that's going on, and there's a very particular schedule that needs to happen. If you start to move your mealtime to mimic the mealtime of your destination a couple of days earlier, your body will naturally move faster through the jet lag process. And you'll actually feel much less jet lag.
Interesting. That's fascinating to me, and I agree. The gut is amazing. Yeah. How it controls inflammation. Oh my gosh, your clarity of mind. It's unbelievable what the body can do.
A big deal.
But that's fascinating, and what a great tip to think about. Even if I'm flying out to New York, how do I start almost prepping to get on their schedule so when I'm there, it's not so different.
Right. Well, because. And also, just from a corporate perspective, you don't want to show up with a client and not be hungry for the main meal, right? Because then you make your client feel weird, like, why is he not eating and I'm eating? And then you're like, oh, I got jet lag. Well, I thought you were a performance expert. Why do you have, you know what I mean? Like, you want to, right? Yes. So, or I thought we were going to talk business and, that kind of stuff. So, you want to be on that schedule, and that's going to have both a visual aspect to it as well as an internal aspect to it.
Interesting. I imagine everyone watching right now didn't know there was so much to sleep, because this is, I mean, the notes I'm writing here, it's just amazing, and it's simple changes, right? So for that challenge I threw down just a few minutes ago, it's what can you do over the next 10 days? Can you do that? Can you figure out when you need to wake up? Go back 7.5 hours. If you wake up in 5 minutes, you're good. If not, start making some little tweaks and adjustments earlier or later, whatever you need to do. How can you start incorporating going outside when you're feeling sleepy and get that sunlight right away? It's leveraging the mind and body. I love this stuff.
No, it's super cool stuff. And that step, that finding the bedtime that you just repeated to everybody, that is the first step. Yes. Everybody has to do that in order to start. So that's exactly where everybody needs to start. So you're right on in identifying that. Okay,
excellent. No, this is going to be a fun little project I take on starting tonight. I know you don't have a lot of time, and I know that we're gonna, be doing some really cool things together in the future, and combining kind of our efforts to really drive high performance, right? And how do we tackle the mindset, and how do we tackle the recovery through sleep and nutrition, and so obviously we'll keep everybody informed of kind of what's going on and what's coming and all that stuff. You have time for one or two more questions?
Of course.
Okay. So I'll just take a few minutes of your time, and I guarantee folks will do like a part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, whatever, as much as we need to answer questions and all that. Let's talk about caffeine real quick, because it's something that I love. My coffee. I lived in Switzerland, so I got this European flavor.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
I don't know, flair. So I do that. For folks that drink caffeine, because it sounds like caffeine's not a bad thing.
No, not at all.
From your perspective, but when, what's too much caffeine, and not an amount, or when should I stop, or how do I manage that?
Okay, so I'm going to give people 3 cardinal rules about caffeine. Okay, so number 1 is do not have coffee be the very first thing that you drink every day, and I'll tell you why. Okay, when you wake up in the morning, most people don't know this, but just breathing out, your breath has a good bit of moisture in it. And throughout the night, you will lose approximately 1 liter of water every night. You wake up dehydrated. Okay, so the very first thing you should do is you should have a bottle or a glass of water by your bedside, but 12, 16 ounces, and you should drink the entire thing right as you wake up. Okay? You need to hydrate. All right? That's number 1. Number 2, the hormones that are required in your body to wake you up, the 2 primary hormones are cortisol and adrenaline, okay? And when those 2 kick in and wake you up, if you compared the strength of cortisol and adrenaline to caffeine, okay, it would be like comparing cocaine to weak tea, okay? Cortisol and adrenaline are much, much more powerful. So adding a little bit of caffeine right after you wake up, it does nothing for your alertness, okay? However, if you wait until the adrenaline and the cortisol naturally begin to drop, which is approximately 90 minutes after you wake up. So in our example, if you're waking up at 6:30, then at 8:30, that's when you have your first cup of coffee.
Okay.
The caffeine will naturally bring those cortisol and adrenaline levels back up, and you will actually have an additive effect as opposed to a lessening effect. So wait until an hour and a half to 2 hours after you wake up. Make sure you're hydrated first, then use your caffeine. Now, we're looking at caffeine across the day. So this is like a caffeine hack, all right?
Yes.
So if you're looking across your day, then you're going to say, okay, when am I going to have those dips in energy that I want to try to even out or give myself better? So number 1, if you're going to bed at the right time with our new bedtime formula, you should notice within about a week or 2 that your energy level is going to get much smoother because you're actually getting the right amount of sleep at the right time. That's number 1. Number 2, by delaying that caffeine and then having your coffee 90 minutes later, you're also going to cut out an amount of caffeine that you normally would have been drinking during that first 2 hours, which is actually good.
Yes.
Right? So now you've got a smaller dose of caffeine. So now you got to think about, all right, well, how do I want to get my caffeine? Well, a lot of people say coffee. Well, here's the thing about coffee. If you go to Starbucks and you get your mochaccino, frappa, whatever, that's got tons of sugar, and that's not really getting your caffeine, okay? Like, if you're going to be a coffee drinker, and I am a coffee drinker, I just drink it black. Okay, and here's why. If you have drip black coffee, it has the highest caffeine content of anything, better than espresso, better than cappuccino. Just a regular 6-ounce cup of drip black coffee. It has about 250 milligrams of caffeine.
Okay.
All right. That's equal to 3 sodas. Okay. That's equal to a lot of different things that are out there. So 1 cup of coffee will get you where you need to go. Like I said, around that 8:30, 9 o'clock mark.
Yes.
Half of that caffeine is out of your system in between 6 and 8 hours. Okay. So when you're looking for your second cup of coffee after that 8:30, 9 o'clock,
yes,
you are more than welcome to have it at around 11:30 to 12:30, somewhere in between there, sort of in the lunchtime range, if that's really what you want to do. Or substitute water. You will be surprised at how often you hydrate can actually give you as much energy, if not more energy, than caffeine in general.
Yes.
If you absolutely are dying and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted. And by the way, a lot of people get exhausted somewhere between 1 and 3 in the afternoon. That actually has more to do with a core body temperature drop than it has to do with anything else. Go outside and get sunlight, because that'll stop that melatonin production again, because that's what's happening between 1 and 3.
Yes.
And you won't feel as sleepy. And then when you come back, you can have your last cup of coffee, if you will, for the day. Now, I'm going to teach you a super secret trick that I teach all of my corporate CEOs. I call it the nap a latte. All right?
Okay.
Here's what you do. Is you take a 6-ounce cup of drip black coffee. You throw 3 ice cubes in it to cool it down. Okay? You drink it, the whole thing, as quick as you can, and then you close your eyes for 25 minutes and you take a 25-minute nap. Okay? What you will do is you will reduce the amount of adenosine that's in your brain by getting your stage 1, stage 2 sleep. The caffeine kicks in about 20 minutes. You're good for 4 hours, guaranteed.
Okay, so let me make sure I have this down. The Napa Latte. 6 ounces black coffee.
Yep.
Plus 3 ice cubes to cool it down.
Right.
Drink it as fast as possible.
Yep.
Close eyes.
For 25 minutes.
And I guess if you fall asleep, you fall asleep. But
yeah, but have your and that's the goal, is to fall asleep, right? And so have an alarm set on your phone to wake you up after 25 minutes, because if you go longer, you're going to feel like crap.
Yeah.
Have you ever taken a nap and you felt worse, not better?
Yes.
That's because you slept too long. By stopping it at the 25-minute mark, you're only getting stage 1 and stage 2 sleep, which is great, and the caffeine kicks in, and you are good to go.
And that's about 1 or 2 in the afternoon?
Yeah. And you don't want to go much past about 2:30 in the afternoon when you do the Napa Latte, because of the half-life, right? If it's, let's say it's 6.5, 7 hours, if you stop drinking around 3 and it's 7 hours, then it's out of your system almost completely by 10, which allows you to get to bed, because most people are going to bed somewhere between 10 and 12.
Yes, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Napa Latte.
Yeah, there you go.
It's the second challenge, add in Napa Latte. So all you bosses
Not
out
every
there.
day. You don't want to do a Napa Latte every day.
Okay.
You only want to reserve that for times when you're really crashing.
Okay.
Hopefully you've gotten some sunlight during the day. You started this new sleep schedule. You should be actually feeling nice and energized. But use the Napa Latte as your secret weapon. So let's say you've got a business meeting at the end of the day, or you really have to be energetic. That's when you use the Napa Latte.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is awesome. Oh, man, I could spend hours with you. Okay. So let me do this real quick. Before I kind of put one last question on you, but where can people find you? I've mentioned thesleepdoctor.com. It's not sleepdoctor.com. It's thesleepdoctor.com. Right. But where else would you like them to connect with you? Social media, other areas?
Yeah. So you can find me on Facebook at The Sleep Doctor. My handle on Twitter is The Sleep Doctor. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me there. But one of the things I tell people is, if you want to do something really interesting, I have a new book out that's called The Power of When, and it's all about timing. And so in our conversation today, we've talked a lot about timing. This actually helps people identify their own personal timing by what's called a chronotype. So chronotype's a big scary word, but everybody's actually already knows what it is. If you've ever heard of somebody being called an early bird or somebody being called a night owl, those are actually chronotypes. And so I have a quiz that people can take online for free. All right, so you just go to thepowerofwhenquiz.com. And Matt will put it up in the show notes, or let you be able to find it. But it's thepowerofwhenquiz.com. thepowerofwhen.com, and The Power of When is the title of the book. And you can take the quiz. It takes you about 2 minutes, and you will learn which one of your 4 chronotypes you are, and then it'll give you a ton of information about timing. When should you do your certain things? Because there's a whole other aspect of my business, not just on the sleep side of things, but also on when is the perfect time to do just about anything. And so in my new book, I have a whole section on work performance. So when is the best time to present your ideas? When is the best time to ask your boss for a raise? When is the best time to go on a job interview? When is the best time to email, to buy, to sell? All of these things are critical based on timing because, as we've been discussing, our body is just these hormones that kind of ebb and flow, but they flow in a very consistent basis if you're getting the right sleep. And so once you lock and load into your sleep schedule, then we can start to really play around with you knowing, hey, I'm gonna rock this presentation at 11 o'clock in the morning because I get up at 4:30 and that's my go time. And once you know that, that's when you schedule your presentations.
Interesting. So I'll be taking the quiz first of all, but I'll have a link to that in the show notes. Everyone just please go below this and you'll see a bunch of stuff. I'll put a link to the book. I'll put a link to the quiz, all your Twitter, Facebook handles, all that sort of stuff. Let me ask you one final question, and then I'll let you go for today, even though I don't want to let you off the hook, but I will. If you had kind of one piece of advice to give the individuals watching today, based on you growing your business, you working with clients, based on what you teach and consult on a daily basis, that would help take them from kind of that good to that great, or that I'm doing okay to exceptional, right? Based on kind of all your experience, and it's a loaded question, but kind of what would that one piece of advice be for the listeners today?
I would say it would be make sleep a priority, because so many people think that if I sleep less, I'll produce more, right? I always hear from my corporate executives, oh, Michael, I'll sleep when I'm dead, right? That's one of their favorite things to tell me. And my answer is, well, you're going to be dead a lot sooner if you don't listen to what I'm saying right now.
Yes.
I can show you the data. We make more mistakes when we're sleep deprived. We don't think as clearly when we're sleep deprived. We make much poorer decisions when we are sleep deprived. There's lots and lots of data on this. Figure out what your sleep number is by the experiment that Matt and I have been talking about, and get it. I promise you will see these results. I mean, I've got, national sports teams calling me. I've got some of the top CEOs in the world doing these types of programs. And what they find is the more consistent they are and the more they value their sleep, the better off they do.
I'm sold. I'm sold. I love it. This is great. Dr. Breus, thank you so much for taking your time, and I know you have to run. And everyone watching, please kind of stay tuned, pay attention. We'll be sending some things out. You'll have a ton of information on the good doctor with me today. And again, thank you so much for your time. We'll be in touch.
You got it. You guys take care and sweet dreams.